My name's Wayne Crockett, and we live right across the street from Dorothy and Randy. And I have a business background. I had 3 businesses, construction businesses, and I have an ordained minister that I preached for about 15 years, and then wrote a book and retired from that. And people go, how did you retire from being a minister? Well, you just stop going to churches and you retire. And I did, and got into different post-ordination studies. And I've been fortunate in my life, both in the ministry and construction, which turned out to be a ministry. I realized that all the people we dealt with, all the houses we built and renovations, we were actually had a big ministry going, and just helping people out. And but I was fortunate enough to meet some really brilliant people, really smart people, way over my head people. I remember one guy, we were ripping their house apart, doing new kitchens and all this stuff. And his brother was there, and I said, David, what does Daniel do? And he said, well, Daniel is the foremost authority on legal contracts between oil companies and oil producing nations in the world. And now Daniel and I have been, we were like friends. We were born on the same day. We got to be really good friends. And I mean, this was a come over for Thanksgiving dinner kind of thing. They were part of our family. We were part of their family, as it turned out. And that was just one example of the brilliant people that I had the pleasure of befriending and meeting. I always thought it was fun to be the dumbest guy in the room. Sometimes you got to have a pretty small room. But it was enriching to me. And so one day, Peggy and I had bought our place a couple years ago, and not long after that, I saw this couple across the street, new couple, and so I walked out and we saw each other in the street and introduced ourselves. And so we got together, and they came over for dinner at one point. And it wasn't very long before I realized, God, I'm with another really smart person. Like, brilliant. I think she's brilliant. Randy, I've learned a lot from Randy on how to keep up with Dorothy. And so we would get together, a couple times a month for dinner, and it sort of would turn into listening to Dorothy. And I not that we couldn't talk, but it got more and more interesting. And I thought, God, this woman is like over the top. She's smart. I mean, she's brilliant. And she has written a book, written 2 books. And she, we saw this coming. She was getting done with it, and at the same time we saw her writing books for other people and writing different things for different, but she was writing a book, a couple books. And I thought, okay, I'm gonna read her books, because I would sit and listen to her, and I was moved by what she said, because it was really out of the box thinking. And I was learning a lot, just spending time with them and thinking, wonder what this book is going to be like. I read a self-help book by Dr. Ben Carson about 30-some years ago. And it's one of those books, have you ever heard someone say, I read this book and it changed my life? We've all heard that. Well, this is one of those books. I read his book and it changed part of my life. Now, it's not going to change everybody's life, but a lot of people's. It's not for everybody. Everybody could read it, they'd be better off for it, but it's a self-help book. Most people don't finish self-help books. But, you know, if you've read half, you can talk about it. And so, this is not a self-help book, or two books that Dorothy has written. This is a nation book. It's a self-help book, but it's for the nation. In other words, you might take this book or that book and somebody else might read it and you get something out of it and somebody else does a little or it doesn't. But this is a book that if you're an American, you need to read the book, both of them. It's not for yourself, it's for your country. It's for the nation. She has taken all the scholarship that she's been involved with and boiled it down to these two books. She could have written 10 books about the same thing, really. I mean, there's that much information there. And so, but I got to know Dorothy well enough in lots of conversation we had to trust her. If Dorothy said something, I'd kind of go, well, I'd think about it a little bit more, and I'd go, oh, she's right. And that would just go on. And so by the time I was reading her book, which is, it's a mind blower. Some of us, it's a smaller explosion than others, but it's really, they're brilliantly written and about subjects that you're not going to read a lot about. These are things that haven't been talked about a lot, except for Dorothy, that I know of. And it's very brilliant. And so what I'm suggesting is that you, when you get these books, trust the author, because she's going to take you for a ride. And it's going to be scary in parts. It really is. I mean, I was like, I got, Peggy, don't bother me, I got to finish this book. I got to find out where this is going. It's brilliant stuff. And, but I trusted her before I started reading the book. So when you promote this book to somebody, say this. Read the whole thing, get to the end. Don't do a self-help book where you read half of it and get something out of it and then put it down. You gotta get to the end. You gotta read all the way through it. This is like a prescription from the doctor that gives you an antibiotic, and you fill it at the pharmacy, and the pharmacist says, now you want to take this whole thing. I don't care whether you feel better or not, just take the whole thing till it's gone. You want to read this book, both of them, till they're gone. The black and white book talks about things that have been happening in this country in the last couple years. I think a lot of us, no matter what political angle you're at, whatever, wherever you come from, we are looking at the country and going, what's going on? Huh? Yeah. And nobody seems to have any answers. And I picked up her book, Black and White, which is, she calls a missive. It's sort of a book she wrote while she was writing the bigger book. And it answers questions that you've had, that you didn't think there was an answer to. And the larger book, The Unraveling, is so important. It teaches you about this country that you thought you knew about. And she takes it to a level that is inspiring, it's hopeful, it's scary, because this country never gave anybody any guarantees. It's up to us, right? So I suggest that you get the books, start, and don't stop until you're done.